All right, gang. Today we have an audio-only special. Normally people do these with webcams, but I'm going to be honest, it's way better to just give you some of these visuals from the upcoming Armax reprint, because otherwise you're just going to see blurry, hazy pictures of me and Danny's faces. It doesn't do anything for you. But obviously, if you can't guess it, I have my guest with me today, Danny Michael of the Cody Firearms Museum. What's your full title right now?
The Robert W. Woodruff Curator of the Cody Firearms Museum, which mostly just leads to people emailing me as Dear Robert or Dear Mr. Woodruff.
This is like Jonathan. He has an annoyingly complicated title. Why can't you guys just be called Curator of Gun Museum?
No, it has to be. That's day one of museum studies, is your title has to be complex.
Right. It's got to be like this overt, odd, cadence, whatever. You need to take a master's course to understand your title.
Correct. That's the goal.
Yeah. But anyway, I have Danny here to talk about the reprint of the first, how many issues is it? 6 volumes?
6 volumes, 9 issues.
That's not confusing. How'd they get broken up like that? Do you know that?
I don't know. I suspect it had a little bit to do with like how many articles they had available at a given time. And like some of the ones that are like single issue volumes are really like they could have been split into 2, but one of the articles was really long. So I don't know exactly why it fell the way it did.
Wow. To be fair, what year was this started? It was sometime in the 80s?
Yeah, so we started I would say we, like I was there.
Yeah, you were.
The museum started publishing these in 1987.
And this was
officially spring 87.
This was a pet project of Herb Hose's, right?
Yeah, this was Herb's like vision. One of his like big visions for the museum was to publish this journal. So he started as curator sort of in the mid to late 80s. So he started this journal pretty quick after he became curator in Cody, and then published it actually beyond when he had left. So he left the museum in the early 90s, and then he kept working on this project in conjunction with the museum for a number of years. But it was really his like passion project to try and get this academic journal for historic arms going.
Nice. So before we get too deep into it, right at the front of this thing, I want to make sure I'm telling people the reason we're talking about this at all is twofold. One, we kind of promised we would, and it turns out that was 2 years ago. You and I are slow. And 2, it timed out well that we waited, because you guys are reprinting the first 6 volumes, which are desperately hard to find in the aftermarket right now. So that's probably good. I think I have 2 of them. I definitely haven't replaced all 6 of the first ones.
Yeah, and we're doing a reprint on Kickstarter doing a project on Kickstarter to create the reprint. So the goal is to reprint all the original journals for Armax, all the original issues, because as you said, like they're hard to find, and there's really good firearms content in these, and some of the stuff it's just not talked about anywhere else, and got covered in Armax, and it's kind of a shame that people have to like go track down the corners of eBay to find these things.
Yeah, I think the 2 that I ended up with, I got them very specifically. I can't remember what article I was going for, but this was before you and I ever even talked about, making new Armaxes, let alone reprinting the old ones so people could catch up. But I imagine Armax, as it originally had a fairly limited circulation. Really, I think more of a word-of-mouth journal at that time.
Yeah, it really was. It was probably published out or like announced to museum members. It got some traction in like the Winchester collecting community.
Right.
But I don't think it was ever very hugely circulated. And then as we've been printing the new one, sort of when we revived the journal with volume 7 a couple of years ago, when we did our first podcast about this.
Sort of.
When we did that one, the people quickly, like almost immediately, people were like, "Are you guys going to do the old ones? Or are you going to reprint those?" So yeah, that it seemed like a natural thing to eventually be able to do.
Nice. So let's set the stage just a little bit more. You and I have spoken, I guess, twice on audio for the show. One was I don't know if you were in that one or not, actually. It might have been once. Anyway, there was a brief introduction of the revival of Armax, but even before that was released, you and I had a huge 2-hour conversation about the fraud coming from R.L.Wilson.
Yeah.
And he was a cult collector who ingratiated himself into the museum community and managed to get some, I guess you'd call them deaccessions and trades going, and then frankly looted some of the better cult pieces, and then also went around modifying cult pieces in order to get more money out of them, right?
Yeah, there's kind of a couple layers to R.L. Wilson. And obviously a long time ago, we really dealt with what he did at the Connecticut State Library.
Right. We have a huge thing that people can listen to that I'll probably link below this, that if they want to get through all that.
And so that's its like own case. But then there's also cases of like of refurbs and embellishment of historic cults to make them into something more than they were, that took place, through his many years of being kind of the go-to guy on cults. Mm-hmm. He knew the people that could engrave like the originals, and certainly some of those guns were not originally engraved. So
I think we touched on this briefly, and I know you and I personally have talked about it, but the first, I believe, 2 issues of Armax were almost, I believe you explained it as Herb trying to just get everything on paper because of those shenanigans. Yeah,
so the early volume 1 of Armax, it does have some non-cult stuff in there, but it's primarily the 2 biggest articles from that are actually a complete reprint or a complete reissue, I guess, of the cult, like the historic cult collection, okay, as it would have been in the 19th century, included with some reference photography. And I think I've always thought it was connected to the Wilson case at the Connecticut State Library, because
that was very contemporary at the time, wasn't it?
Right. That it only happened a few years before. And the library, it had happened, the actual trade had happened in like the early 80s. Herb took over as curator in Cody in the sort of mid 80s and then started publishing Armax in 87. The news about what Wilson had done didn't really break for a few years. So this was when it was published, when Armax was published, it was the news about what had happened with Wilson was really, really fresh.
Yeah, because it took some time for people to catch on to the fact that anything had happened at all.
Right. Yeah, it was actually a few years before anybody really truly understood what had happened.
So Herb is I don't know why. I just really love the narrative around this where he's going, I can't believe he ripped them off. I'm going to make a list of all the things that he ripped them off for.
Yeah, I think that was part of his goal, was like, here's to document what had been in the cult collection at this snapshot in history.
Right.
And then it's kind of up to you, reader, to understand that some of these pieces are no longer there, and some may have been for relatively normal reasons. Others are for the then public reasons associated with Wilson. So yeah, this was definitely like, I think, Herb's attempt to document the collection as it had been before all the pieces were just gone to history.
Does he contextualize the pieces at all? Because that was part of their problem, right? They didn't really know what they had.
He offers what cult recorded about them. So Herb in those articles, he doesn't record any like, okay, hey, so here's what happened. Like, this guy ripped off the collection. He just writes down, here's the piece, here's the notes that cult had kept on it. And he might offer a few notes about why this one in particular is important or was important to cult's history.
That's what I'm thinking of. I wonder how many key pieces he sort of identified so that they could look at it and go, whoopsie doodle.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a few that he talks about in there. And it's interesting because, in those articles, what Wilson had got out of the collection, it's a mix of a couple high value pieces and some additional ones.
Right.
But some of that stuff's still actually available. So we're hoping to go back to we've already been chatting with the folks at the archive at the at the museum in Hartford that has the collection now. So we're trying, because one of the goals with the new one is like all these photos are in black and white. So hey, why not do color photography now? So some of the pieces we'll be able to get color photography of, and some of them we might not be
because they're gone.
So
that's actually really interesting, because that is part of the reprint, right? As many photos as possible are going to be retaken in color.
Yep. So our goal is to, what Nick actually said, and is a good way to explain it, is more of a remaster. So like all the original, we're not going to edit the original content, but we are going to, wherever possible, we're going to add in color photography or retake images, or it might have been something that we had a color photo of at the time, but that was too much of a pain to print back then. So we're going to, and since so much of the later issues past volume 1 have featured the CFM collections very heavily, we're hopeful that we can actually do quite a lot of that sort of remastery where we put in color photography. There's a couple articles where we'll probably add some editorial notes, like the whole situation with volume 1, or where there's new information that's become available. We'll do that one. There's one article in volume 6 that's like, it's like a catalog of engineering drawings, which is all now digital, and they published it when the only way to publish a finding guide was paper. So we'll keep it in there, but we're probably going to contextualize that a little bit. But other than a few editorial notes, we're really focusing on remastering it with color photography and getting it printed.
Yeah. And by the way, they've seen while they're listening to this, there's been a scroll by the whole time, as long as they're consuming on video format. So they've seen some of these samples, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's like one-offs or prototypes, or just really weird stories that have sort of a ripple effect, but people don't really know what they're hearing it from. I think one of the big ones is that there's supposed to be a very large article that's well resourced about the Winchester revolvers.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's one of the only places where the Winchester revolver story is published. And for those that don't know, Winchester came very close to making a series of revolver. What happened was
Hugo Borchardt made them a revolver, and they waved it around at Colt, so Colt wouldn't make any more rifles, and then they called a truce. And that's why that happened, okay? Because I read that as a footnote in a gajillion million books. And that's the whole story, right, Danny?
That's the entire story. You nailed it.
So how many pages is the Colt, the Winchester story that is only one sentence long?
It's about 80. It's about 80 pages of research, and that one was written by Herb.
It's just wasteful, because, I mean, we all know that it was Hugo Borchardt, and they did it to scare Colt.
Yeah. That's the reason they hired him.
Yeah.
And kept him from making semi-autos a decade.
Right. They were trying to prevent that too, but once the truce was off, they unleashed him, Right.
So yeah, that story's in there. And it does continue, because as you alluded to, sometime in the 40s or 50s, somebody printed that Borchardt had been involved in the revolvers. So that got repeated a bunch. Mm-hmm. The story about the Colt and Winchester gentleman's agreement, that's a really it's a relatively well-known story, and there is a revolver involved in it, but it's not all of the Winchester revolvers, because they had done a batch and then did a separate single action clone. And so the article really dives like full detail, examines all the ones in the CFM collection, a couple of the ones that are in private collections, and I think just about everything you could think of for those revolvers is published in there, and that's not available anywhere.
Nobody else has that.
Like literally nowhere else. There's like, I think Herb mentioned it in one of his Winchester histories on like a page or two, but that's hardly anything.
Now, a lot of the articles are written by Herb, but then he also managed to get some other writers in at the time, right?
Yeah, so Herb was working in the collection, and especially as you mentioned, like those sort of those niche items in the collection, like the Winchester revolvers or like Winchester self-loaders or the G30s. But he did bring in other authors. So there's articles on like Civil War arms, or there's somebody that wrote an article on the Adirondack guns that Winchester, a company that Winchester bought out and is not well studied.
Oh, wow.
So Herb
That's
definitely found
a really obscure American brand that just most people don't even know existed.
It really is. And it's an interesting part of sort of that late 19th century rifle development. And they're like bolt actions, I guess. They're normally part of the lever action story, but they're not really lever guns.
Right.
And again, it's another one of those things like, where are you going to go to learn about Adirondacks and the variants thereof?
I mean, it's almost, it's weird how Burgess almost got completely buried under the Winchester story too, you know?
Yeah.
There's just all these brands that sort of get absorbed and we just forget about them unless something cool happens, you know?
Yeah, and that, like I said, that niche topic area was something that I think Herb wanted to bring out with when he was working on this journal, and I think to a pretty successful degree he did.
I know I've enjoyed the old ones that I've gotten a hold of. I've certainly enjoyed the new ones that are coming out because it's a peer-reviewed journal. It definitely takes a step up over the usual article writing. Not that there's not some guys out there that are doing good work, but it's something else. I feel if you're a C&Rsenal watcher to the point that you're watching the primers, I don't think you're going to go wrong with grabbing up a collection of Armax. I think it sort of sets that tone of making sure you double check and making sure that you're getting the story as clear as you can get it. And I'm really appreciative of it as a journal, so I'd highly recommend it. Now, I have a question for you more personally, though.
Sure.
You're a curator, like, you have Herb's old job, right?
That's correct.
Okay. He had a lot of time to go wandering around doing primary research inside the museum. How come you're not doing a lot of that?
That's, I try to do it when I can.
They didn't even really have like a lot of computers back then. So I'm just saying, like, you have better technology, more connected. I don't understand, Danny.
Well, really, it's because the first Armax made us so famous and so successful that now I have to.
Like, Ashley cleaned everything up, and now people keep showing up.
Yeah, people actually come visit us now.
They come in the door.
I mean, I did get to write an article for one of the new ones, and I hope to continue it. So I did a study into the pre-Winchester, the rifles that led up to the Winchester.
Right.
And I made it as far as the Smith-Jennings. So there's a ways to go in that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I haven't even gotten to volcanics yet.
Wow.
So.
You mean that's part of the Smith & Wesson lever pistol?
Yes, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Oh, man. So I don't want to drag everybody through this too much, but is there anything in the, redoing this project, is there any article that really stuck out to you that people would really enjoy from this?
I mean, I'm going to repeat this over every time I talk about the reprints, but it's the self-loader series because that's where the Burton is, and the Burton's like probably my favorite gun in the collection. Yeah,
that 2 magazine, Buck Wild, whatever.
Yeah, and
you taunt me with that gun every once in a while. You know that, right?
How do I taunt you?
Because you've shown me pictures of like as far as you've been able to take it apart, and you're like, I just don't know how to get past this one part. And I'm going, I bet I could do it. You're just doing that thing in your head. You're like, I want to be the guy that opens the thing.
Yeah, we have gotten it almost all the way apart, but there's a end cap on the back of the receiver that doesn't want to budge, and I don't want to be the guy that breaks it. So
just do what I do.
What do you do?
If you want to do heat, if you want to get something stuck loose, right, and you don't want to torch it to the point that you change the metallurgy, right? So you get a little hand torch and you heat it up, but you don't cook it, and then you take canned air and you turn it upside down and spray it with that, and it freezes it real fast, and then you just warm it back up, and then you hit it with cold blast of canned air, and you do like 20 times, and almost everything will give way.
Somewhere a conservator is having a heart attack and they don't know what caused it.
Why? Neither one of them. It's just a little heat. It's just a little compressed air. It's not going to hurt it. I imagine it wouldn't, but I can, knowing conservators, one somewhere just fell over and they have no idea why. I'm gonna show up to I'm gonna come visit the Royal Armory sometime and just bring like a strap wrench and a torque bar.
I'm sure you'll make Jonathan's day.
Yeah, he'd probably laugh. It's the rest of them that would have a problem.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
So your favorite article is the auto... Wait, you said auto loaders?
Well, yeah, I really enjoy that. It's another one of the Herb's articles, but he did... Or actually, excuse me, it was not a Herb article. But they did a survey of like the self-loading rifles that Winchester made. And, they covered them pretty well from like the early self-loaders in the 03, 05, 07 series to the G30 rifle series. And of course, covering that much ground, everything's going to be a little bit general.
Yeah, but still, how many people really actually have a list of all the Winchester autoloaders? You don't even tend to think of autoloaders when you think of Winchester.
Right. It's one of those... We actually had a discussion around the office one day, like how many things could we attribute to Winchester besides the lever action rifle? Right. It's a really interesting discussion, but for that article, it's one of the only places where the Burton was even talked about besides the Small Arms Review article from the early 90s that coined it as the balloon buster.
Right.
And this was the only article that wasn't, it was published around the same time. And it was the only article that went to the very limited primary material. And study the artifact itself, whereas the balloon buster article is, filled with a lot of incorrect assumptions about the gun.
Right.
And this one,
wait, what are you talking about? Did it fire
the detail
30-06 incendiary rounds?
It did not.
We
do have the.
I played Battlefield 1. It can rip an airplane out of the air like nobody's business. All right, I know that's what that gun does.
I'm quite bad with it in Battlefield 1.
That's a virtual simulation, okay? They know how it works.
I had to use it since I get to work with it, and I'm only okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm not that I'm that great at Battlefield, but yeah. And so it's this article about an obscure gun, and it was the source one. In fact, it's still one of the only published sources with not a lot of misinformation about the gun. So
you're gonna say, well, we found it, and it's here.
Yeah. But the other articles tended to like fill in the blanks, whereas this one gave the context without filling in the blanks. And so when those other articles started to fill in the blanks, that's where they kind of went off the rails.
Oh, okay.
My favorite is like the one of them tried to like do this narration about the gun where when they published it, and I forget which one it was. It might have been the Balloon Buster article, but they like tell this story of like the writer meeting Tom Hall in a dusty corner of the Winchester factory where this gun hadn't been, and it was published in 1990. The collection had been in Cody by that point for over 15 years.
Right.
Or just about 15 years. And Tom Hall had passed away before that. So like the very basics of like this narration they were creating, were totally wrong.
No, but I see a ton of that in the old writings, which again is why I prefer the Armax style of writing where you're going, okay, just give me what you got and it's okay if you don't have anything else. Yeah.
And, and that's a really good example too of, one of the extremely limited primary sources we have is there's a couple of load data cards for the 345 cartridge the Burton used.
Right. And so we know the bullet weight.
We know the bullet. I'm saying we know the bullet weight. We know the powder charge.
Oh, yeah.
And we know the expected velocity.
Oh, we're done. We're there.
So we're basically there.
We just got to chamber test it.
That's right. Those cards were never, those weren't a part of the original article. So I'm hoping we can include images of those in with the original as we sort of do some of this remastering and get more photography in. Because it's a really interesting source to understand that gun.
Is it bad that I just want to make another copy of that gun?
I mean,
the problem is we have to open the hatch, Danny. We're going to have to open the hatch.
We're going to have to open the hatch.
We can't copy it if we don't open the hatch.
What I think is possible is that the rim is not that far off from 223. And I'm just saying, I bet it would work if you got a custom barreled AR. And then we could call it like 9 USA or something high speed. And
yeah. Just the cartridge. Bring the cartridge back, but not the gun.
Yeah, bring the cartridge back.
Okay. All the balloons will be unsafe.
They will all be unsafe now. With the 2,000 feet a second Self-loader.
Yeah. I'd do it. I mean, I would do it. What's the cartridge length? Would it fit in the ejection port on a standard upper?
Oh yeah, it's like it's 351 Winchester length, so it's not long.
What? We're doing
It is
this.
a 351 Winchester case with a pointed bullet, so.
How is this not something that we're doing for like PCCs right now, then?
Because people are wrong.
They are wrong, but we are way off topic now. Okay, so least favorite article?
Least favorite article.
Or one that gave you the hardest time?
One that will give us a bit of a hard time is actually the Adirondack article. Outside
really?
of the formatting for the Colt inventory list, that one was tough because OCR did not like that at all, and
you just have to do it manually.
We had to do that one manually. But the Adirondack one, because almost all the guns photographed were from private collections that are no longer accessible. And actually, one of the photos of one of the guns is somebody like standing on their porch holding it.
Oh God!
So I don't want to like dissuade people that the quality of the original Armax wasn't good. But I was flipping through and there's like all these nice catalog photography
like
of all the guns being discussed. There's just one dude holding an Adirondack on his porch.
And whoever's working on that was like, "Kate, can you send me a picture of that gun at least?" Yeah, okay. Oh my God! He's sitting there going, "Of course he did."
Yeah. So how we replace that photo, I'm not entirely sure. I might have to go find my best 90s clothes and stand on a porch somewhere.
Do you have that? Is that rifle in your hands at least?
Yeah, just holding an Adirondack on a porch in jean shorts.
How many rifles are you missing from that collection? Do you
know? From the Adirondack one?
Yeah.
One or two, because we have a couple in the museum collection that we can use.
I guess if anybody knows where they might be, let us know.
Yeah. And there's actually pertinent to some of the stuff you're working on, there's an article on a Marlin self-cocking revolver in .44 Russian, and that was from a private collection. And so we're going to have a heck of a time tracking down photos of that gun.
Do you know who had the collection to begin with?
I do. It was a guy named Carr.
Oh, do you know where it's sold or inherited?
That we haven't been able to track down just yet, but we're working on it. So if anybody happens to be listening to this and owns a rare Marlin self-cocking revolver.
Yeah. Well, what's going to happen. We're going to get a bunch of people with Marlin 38s.
Yeah.
Selling us.
That was a mistake. Sorry.
You got to be very specific, Danny. It doesn't matter. They still tell you whatever.
So yeah, that one will be a challenge. The Adirondack one will be, I think, one we can overcome. And then, we kind of had to make a judgment call on what we do with like that effectively a now obsolete finding guide to our engineering drawings. So
yeah, that is a tricky one.
So we're probably going to reduce the scale of it and tell people where to go to find the easy to use digital version
right
at the front of it. But we are going to include it because it's part of the original, and we are trying to be careful that we don't
set it as a goal. If you sell enough copies, you just do his posters.
Yeah. If we sell enough copies, we will print 30,000 posters.
Yeah, that sounds good. You just gotta sell a lot of copies.
We gotta sell a lot of copies.
Set a goal. It's like, okay, 2.5 million copies sold. We'll print 30,000 posters.
Yeah, that's it. That's the number, 2.5.
Yeah.
So Nick's going to love me after this.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. If it upsets Nick, I'll do it. I think that's really about it, though, right? Like, this is we're kicking it around, but this is a pretty straightforward little project for you guys. It's reprinting those first 6, and then there's some options in terms of how to get them bundled. So if you want them to look nice or whatever, do you know what's the base cost? Like, what's the low end of getting in on this project?
So the base cost gets you 2 bound volumes. It'll have all the originals, but they'll be in just a 2-book set.
Okay.
The original was obviously 9 9 volumes.
Yeah, all spread out.
So it'll be 2 volumes, and that's at $98. The sort of, if you want the individual issues as they would have been originally, that's at $220 on the Kickstarter.
So it's interesting, just to hear it. It's kind of interesting because you're going, that's like over double, but then you're thinking you have to have all these covers and spines and whatever. It's actually a lot more handling.
And it is, we're aware that it's, it's not the cheapest thing to get into. However, if you compare them to tracking down the cost of the originals now, it's...
Oh, hell no. No, you'd be spending more than $100 for the one.
Yeah, it's pretty inexpensive. I actually tried to, because we have a set in the archives here, but I didn't want to beat that up as we were scanning them and doing the editing. So I went out to try and assemble a set. And it was a lot of money. Like it was much more than $220 to get a full set.
I don't doubt that.
And it took a while because you had to wait for the one issue you needed to come up, right? So it was
a bit of a challenge. You didn't call me to see which ones I had to send you.
Yeah, I should have done that. The one way it can get to help ease the cost, and going back to when we recorded our original plug for Armax. So if you are a current subscriber to Armax and you stay a subscriber through print time, so we're expecting spring 24.
Okay.
So if you stay a subscriber, it's hard to say, till next year, and you hop in the Kickstarter at the $98 level, you will receive an upgrade to the $220 set.
Oh,
so you get a free upgrade. Obviously, one of our goals with the Kickstarter is to get these reprinted, but we're also trying to drum up subscribers to make sure that the current one is sustainable. And all of our current subscribers have been very, very patient with us. We've run into a lot of delays in shipping, trying to publish a journal. Coming out of COVID we should have expected that, I guess.
It's a perfect time to really relaunch a journal, right?
It was the best time when you couldn't get paper, you couldn't get it shipped, you couldn't get it distributed. It went great. So our current subscribers have been tremendously patient with us, and as a thank you to them, we wanted them to be able to get a nice upgrade if they bought in at the $98 level. So that's a thank you to our existing subscribers and an opportunity. And the deadline for that to take. So if you're a subscriber by the time the Kickstarter ends, you'll be able to get in on that.
Okay, cool. So probably the clearest route in terms of saving money would be go for the low end, but then so like if you just want it, if you're going, look, I'm not here for the mission, I'm just here for the content. The way to go would be come in at like the $98 level and then also go subscribe, and then that way, boom, you get your free upgrade anyway, and it's no cost to you, and you're subscribed and you get all the data. Now, if you're somebody that's sort of a believer in this, the extra funds are just going to go towards the whole Armax production going forward, right?
That's right. If you're more of you want to support the mission of the journal, we're really appreciative of that. There's the 220 level. There's a couple collector's editions. We even have we're doing a hard cap of 25 lifetime subscriptions. Okay. Those are obviously going to be very pricey, but they're a lifetime subscription to Armax, and come with a lot of really nice upgrades. And my favorite
bespoke leather slipcase with 11 ex libris book plates.
The one I'm most excited about is the 1 of 25 Armax belt buckle.
Wait, what? Where's that?
That's at the top tier.
Oh, really? That's that big 5K one, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome, though.
That you get a
How
1
big
of 25.
How big of a belt buckle are we talking about, though?
Like Western rodeo sized.
That's tempting. Do you get one of those?
I do. So I guess it'll be 1 of 26.
Oh, now I know why you're in it.
The entire reason I did this project.
The unlocked belt buckle perk.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't want to beat it to death, so I guess I'll cut you loose. But any final notes? Anything that people need to know?
I don't think so. Head to the Kickstarter page.
Yeah, we'll get linked out.
Which will be linked, or head to armaxjournal.org if you want to become a subscriber. If you do, and you happen to also be a member of the Royal Armories or the CFM, there's also discounts available for you.
Oh, you guys are friends.
We are friends. We even talk to each other when YouTube's not running.
Yeah, no, it's
crazy.
I try to chat at Jonathan all the time.
But yeah, we really appreciate the support from you and your channel members and from everybody that subscribes.
Oh, well, it makes my life easier because I can just be like, who already researched this, so I don't have to do any primary research.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fill that gap in primary research for
to do some of this work. And then after this, you're just going to stop talking to people at the museum and just go work from the collection from now on, right? Because you're not going to...
Yep. I'm jumping. Actually, this past couple of weeks I have been, because we've been redoing a bunch of labels. And so I've been learning about other cool things I didn't know we have. So it's exciting.
This label's wrong. This label's wrong. How often do you get this label's wrong and they're wrong about the correction?
I'd say it's 50-50. So every time that somebody like comes to us with like, hey, we noticed this on the label. Oh, maybe it's probably like 30% are like just like a typo, like a simple, like we spelled bayonet wrong or something like that.
Right.
30% think they're right and they're not. And 30% actually caught us on something.
Yeah. I got in trouble when I came over. You told me to stop telling you things.
But now we're trying to get them all right.
Yeah.
Although I'm going to intentionally leave like five or six wrong that are like pretty obvious because I'm convinced that actually raises the enjoyment for certain gun guys.
Oh, are you kidding? Honestly, you could just get them right and they'll still get excited though, because I tend to do stuff like that. I've debated doing a big push to rename all the Type like 35 and 38s and stuff and Type 99 Arisakas. I'd like to really get it ingrained that they're Nambus. Because it's just like the Type 35 you can argue is like an Arisaka / Nambu rifle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But man, once you get to the Type 38, there's very little left of the Arisaka, and it's really a lot of genius moves by Nambu. You'd almost call it more of a Mauser Nambu than you would call it an Arisaka anything.
So let's rename them all.
Yeah, let's just go through and rename all sorts of stuff and just watch people get mad.
If I write Nambu Mauser on our Type 99s, I will definitely get comments.
Oh, I get in trouble all the time because I see stuff and I go, also Japanese rifles, right? They have like the first, second, third series or whatever. And then they go, oh, this is the 0 series. And I go, you guys didn't notice that there were blank ones and you just started this. Like, hold on. This isn't the ground floor. This is the first. That's the second. Whoa, we started it down this way. We'd have to retype the several pamphlets that we made so far. Oh my God, you cursed us all. You cursed us all because you didn't want to retype like 6 things.
So I'm having a little bit of a dilemma as we retype labels, and now that we're well and truly off track, your listeners may appreciate this, but like, do we write for the audience or do we write like the most technically correct?
Yes,
because
it's funny.
Because we could write the most like technically correct labels and list like all the model variations, but then we lose then we get a lot of people with eyes glazing over who, they don't really care if it's a 3rd issue or a 2nd model or this or that.
Why don't you come up with a mascot that's old fuddy guy? And you do double labels. You do this very nice, clean label that's the technical whatever, right?
Right.
And then you have this fun sticker that you put alongside of it, in which this funny guy's like, that there's the boom. And then every label starts with that there's, and then you just handwrite in whatever he was going to say. And then just turn into a whole mascot thing. I'd buy a shirt.
That their shirt?
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah. I used one of them in the war.
Which war and which side?
Basically, like peeking out from behind. You have to animate. You have to draw them so they peeks out from behind the official tag.
I'm just picturing Clippy and flannel.
No. It's got to be like a weird derivative Elmer Fudd thing that's enough that you don't get in trouble.
Right. But kind of Clippy-esque.
Yeah. But just peeking out from behind your tags.
Yeah. We can do that.
Yeah, okay.
I'll just I'll start over with the 3,000 labels. That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. That's why you got to just print off the one thing that goes behind all the labels and then you handwrite in everything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm really going to let you go. But everybody should check out the Kickstarter and take a look. I'm going to be ordering them myself because I never got a full back set. So I'm not just telling you guys to do it. This is not a paid promotion. Nobody's ever given me any money for this. I just would greatly prefer that there be journals like this getting published than not. I think a lot of other areas of history have this option, and in the firearms world, we don't. So I'd like to keep it rolling. There's some lovely... I found that like the European market tends to have better written articles than the American market, but they're also sort of weird and esoteric and random. And Gun Sword Collector's been doing a little better lately, if I'm honest. I don't want to throw shade on probably what is the more recognizable one right now. But they are just articles. They're just sort of, they're almost opinion pieces. You know, they're not trying to be, but they almost are, because they're just gathering whatever data and blurting it out with limited, citation. And they can range. They can range from some of the stuff that our mutual friend Alex writes is very well cited and very well understood, and he's very careful with what he does. But then other stuff kind of creeps in there. And so it's nice to have a journal that you can just pick up and go cover to cover with and not be inundated with weird ads and, bizarre articles mixed in with great ones,
Yeah, and I mean that's the goal, right? Is to be the source for contemporary small arms history and writing. And we say that there is a distinction because there's the Journal of Arms and Armor that covers a little bit earlier time period than we do.
Right. But they always like suits of armor and stuff.
Right. They do some firearm stuff, and we're really trying to fill that late 19th century, 20th century gap in academic research. And that's the goal.
Let's be honest. We've had this talk before, but firearms kind of get the rub in traditional, literature. Well, I shouldn't say literature, but in traditional museum sciences and in traditional history sciences. I don't know how to explain it, but it feels like you can get away with writing about Ottoman sword belts or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you try to write about a firearm from WW1, then everybody kind of goes, this isn't really,
Yeah. Yeah, you can write on like conceptual stuff about the war. You can write on, you can even write on the uniforms. But once you actually get into the actual firearms, it gets much tougher to find a home for your research.
Right. Anyway, well, everybody go read it.
So send it to us.
Yeah, everybody go read it. Do you guys take writers, as a matter of fact? We
do. So if you have something that you've been working on and researching and you think, man, this journal sounds like the home for it, it's about firearms, we don't require that you have a PhD or, we just require that the research is good and it'll go through the peer review process. So if it can stand up to that, then we'll publish it.
Okay, cool. So wait, where do they email for that?
They can find that info at rmaxjournal.org to submit, and they can find our style guide and our article requirements.
Cool. I appreciate it, bud. And then for the third time, I'm going to actually end it this time.
Okay.
All right, y'all.
Now we end.
Check out Armax, and then I'm going to get off the line. Say goodbye to everybody, Danny.
Bye, everybody.